Now, I want to learn more about how are you engaging when it comes to like you being a global speaker? Like,
Mm.
how are you finding people to speak to? What are you talking about? Where are you going? What does that look like?
So, as you know, on the continent, word of mouth, as we say, it's much easier. So once you go to a college, let's just say, you speak at a college, like I spoke to University of Accra, and from there, two of the professors sent me to college in Kumasi. Sent me here. Hey, I have this person. Hey, I have this person. So word of mouth spreads much, much, much better. From my standpoint, on the continent, and of course as well social media. But typically, because I'm not too big on social media personally, most of my gigs just come from word of mouth and people just referring once they hear me speak.
Nice. Okay.
What are some of the topics
Oh yeah,
that you
I'm
talk
sorry.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm in the country, main thing in our country in the United States, economics, hard work, entrepreneurship, history, and really again just understanding that whatever your dream is, whatever your goal is, that you can enact it. That's the main things I speak on in this country. And then when I'm in other countries, especially in Africa, I really speak to them as far as understanding who we are innately. And we also have this problem here. So I see it in both places, but who we are innately and understanding that just because you're in this position that you're in now, whatever that position is, that it doesn't mean that you have the opportunity to be greater. And I think there's a lot of times where we, as I would say, middle-aged adults, don't speak to the youth as much. So someone who's, let's say, 15 to 20 doesn't get enough chances to hear from someone who's 30 to 35, who's in their career or who's in business. I think there's a little gap there that's very important because you're close to them and they want to hear from us. So really just getting them to understand, like, hey, if I did it, you can do it as well.
We talk about this all the time, being children of immigrant parents,
Yes, sir.
and from our perspective of growing up African and American, and seeing the how each side treats each other and bouncing
Mm-hmm.
between worlds and all of that. Can you address the same thing from your perspective as an American who has been introduced to African culture and Africa and bouncing between worlds?
Yes, 100%. So, of course, growing up, we got the African booty scratchers,
Yeah.
and we have all of these jokes and all of these names, and I'm forever a class clown. So, even myself growing up, we had African classmates, and I still got along with them, but I always had the jokes. I had the dark jokes, I had all the African scratching and flies, and, I had all of these jokes. And I saw my classmates treating people less than. When we're children, we don't quite understand in depth of what we're doing and how it affects, I would say, y'all, because of course y'all grew up here and went to schools as well. So growing up and now being able to visit the continent and now understanding again the beauty of where we come from. And I think it's not just a shift for myself. I see it now, period, because all of the girls that I went to school with who were African, they cool now. They fine now. People love them now. It's all okay now. And this is even for African Americans who aren't as conscious. It's a little bit more accepting now that we're adults if you grew up with the person. So the biggest thing is so important to just to have communication and just to talk. Because if I say, if we're in the eighth grade and I'm cracking jokes and I'm, African booty skirt, and then bring me to the side and say, hey, look, this is really how this makes me feel. I'm not even an African booty scratcher. I come from a mansion back home. What are you talking about? When I got here, I thought this was poverty. Oh, you got a mansion back home? What does it look like? Okay, here, let me show it to you. Okay, we got a maid back home. We got this, that. So just the conversation of us understanding one another is the most important part. And I'll tell a quick story. When I was in Cote d'Ivoire speaking at a university, I gave my lecture, and after I give my lecture on the continent, I always just like to have real conversation like we having. So I said, hey, what do you? Is there anything you guys want to ask me? And at that time, that's when all of the police killings were more viral. It was around that time in our country, and so one of the kids, she raised her hand and she asked. Her literal words was, "Is it safe there?" And I said, "What?" I didn't know what she was talking about. I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean is this safe? What are you talking about?" And she was like, we see the news, we see the police killings, we see all the violence. Is it safe? If I go to your country and I get pulled over, will I die? I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, yes, police brutality happens, but it's not like you're fine. You'll be safe. Like, what are you talking about? And so I said to her, it's funny that you asked me that because when I was telling my family and my friends that I was headed here, they asked me the same thing. Is it safe? And then they all looked at me like, huh? I said, so yes. I said, because what people there have been seeing are negative images as well. We see the war torn, we see all of these things. So they wanted to know, is it safe? So once we had that dialogue, they understood that everybody's saying the same thing. But if you just have a conversation, people are like, yeah, it's cool. Like, yeah, I was there for weeks, didn't have any issues, and same thing. So it's really just conversation that can clear up so many misinterpretations. But it's definitely something that we need to speak to as both of us, African Americans, and those of y'all who are from the Africa and living here. Just speak again that gap, that 15 to 20-year-old or a little bit younger to us. Just really speaking to us and helping us navigate on both sides because as adults, we know now, but as children, we don't. And if we can get them while they're young, then we know that it'll be better as they get older.
That goes back to the conversation of community because
100%.
each side is listening. We say this all the time. Each side is listening to what somebody else is saying about the other side rather than just cutting out the middleman and having the conversation between ourselves and amongst
Yep.
ourselves to say, nah, this is what the real is. And then once you realize what the
Easy.
real is, it makes it easier to say, oh, okay, cool. I can go there.